You wouldn't believe this person used to be me. Neither would I. Until that old photo slipped out of the notebook. And that face looked at me. With eyes that had been dead for a long time. Back then, I lost everything. The one I loved. My dreams. And even the reason to breathe. All that was left was an empty shell. Walking through a night that never ended. No one knows when I vanished. From my own life. It all started on a rainy afternoon. The call came, short, dry. And ended like a blade slicing through the fragile thread that still tied me to the world. The person I loved was gone forever. I sat frozen, listening to the rain tap against the window. Each drop carving deeper into the question. Why me? In the days that followed, my room became an unlocked prison. I locked myself inside, turned off my phone, never opened the door. Even the slivers of light slipping through the curtains burned my eyes. A reminder that out there, the world kept moving. While I did not. I looked in the mirror and saw a stranger. A hollow face. Eyes without a soul. A smile erased, as if it had never existed. Even my voice felt foreign. Dry, ashen. Like burnt-out embers. Friends came, worried. But every word of comfort fell into the void. The worst part wasn't losing someone. It was losing myself. I no longer knew what I wanted, what I needed, or why I should go on. Each morning, opening my eyes, I saw only another string of meaningless days ahead. Each night, I wished for a sleep deep enough to never wake from. Looking back, I see that my disappearance didn't happen in a single moment. It was slow, silent, piece by piece. Like someone had replaced me with a duller, emptier version. And the most terrifying part is that I let it happen without a fight. And then, one day, the cracks began to form in the false silence I had built around myself. It wasn't some great shock. Just a knock on the door. The landlady stood there, electric bill in hand, and said softly, "You can't go on like this forever." A simple sentence, but it cut straight through the hardened shell around me. I don't remember exactly why I agreed to step outside that day. Maybe it was the golden afternoon sunlight slipping through the half-open door. Maybe it was realizing I'd forgotten the smell of the wind. The moment my foot touched the pavement, I heard my heart beat clearly, for the first time in months. But the journey wasn't a straight climb upward. Every step out of my safe zone was another battle. I sat in a small cafe, watching people talk and laugh, and felt like a ghost wandering through a festival. Once, I tried starting a conversation with a stranger, but my words fell flat, earning only a polite, awkward smile before they turned away. The feeling of being left behind dug even deeper. I went to art classes, tried running, even signed up as a volunteer at a dog and cat shelter. There, I met abandoned animals, tails still wagging for visitors. They didn't care who I was. All they wanted was a gentle hand and a little patience. Maybe they taught me more than anyone else. That pain doesn't stop you from searching for warmth. At night, I was still afraid of the dark. But instead of hiding, I opened my window, let the cold wind rush in, to remind myself the world was still breathing. And if I could still feel that, it meant I still had a reason, even if I didn't know what it was yet. The road ahead is still long, still uneven. But at least, I've started walking. One autumn morning, while I was walking the dogs from the shelter, A small golden one suddenly yanked the leash and bolted toward the street. In that instant, everything seemed to slow. The blare of a car horn, the screech of tires, the pounding of my own heart. I ran on pure instinct, scooping her into my arms. Just before the accident could happen, I sank onto the curb, breathing hard, my hands trembling. She licked my fingers, her eyes glistening with absolute trust. And I realized it had been so long since I'd cared about someone more than myself. That need to protect, to save. It lit up a corner of my darkness I thought had gone out for good. That night, I came back to my room and looked at the old photograph again. This time, I didn't see someone who had died. I saw a person who had hurt, who had lost, but who was still here, inside me. I understood then. Pain doesn't erase who we are. It just makes us lose our way. And this journey was never about finding the old me. It was about learning how to live with the new me. The painful memories were still there, but they no longer pressed on my chest the way they used to. I started piecing my life back together. Not to forget, but to accept. I realized that every loss leaves an empty space. But that space is also where the light can come in. That moment of awakening didn't make me strong overnight, but it laid a solid brick at the foundation. A reminder that I could still love, still care, and still be needed by someone. From then on, I made it a point to find one small reason to step outside each day. A hot cup of coffee, a smile returned, or just the joyful bark. When I arrived at the shelter, I was no longer just existing. I was starting to live. The day I decided to return to the old house, winter had just begun. The familiar road leading there was still full of potholes. The trees along the way still bare, just like the last time I left. But I was different. The rusted iron gate still let out a long, grating creak as it swung open. The smell of dampness and old wood rushed into my nose, pulling with it a flood of memories. Every corner, every crack in the wall whispered the story of a time long gone. I walked slowly, my hand brushing over the surface of a cabinet, as if to make sure I was really here. I sat down in the wooden chair by the window, the one where we used to sit and drink tea. Afternoon light tilted through the torn curtain, casting everything in a pale gold. Instead of the sharp pang I once felt, my heart answered with a sigh. Light, but deep. I realized I was no longer running from my memories. A few neighbors recognized me. They smiled, asked how I'd been, their eyes carrying a hint of surprise. I didn't try to tell them about the months I'd been gone, or prove how much I'd changed. I just listened, nodded, and let myself feel the strange calm of standing here, surrounded by the old, without fear. That night, I closed the door to the house. I didn't lock it, because I knew this place was no longer a dark pit waiting to swallow me. It was just part of the story. A chapter one had already turned. On the way back, I saw the city lights come on. In the rush of people hurrying past, I walked slowly, unafraid of being left behind. I had once tried to forget everything, but now I chose to carry it with me. Not as a burden, but as part of my baggage. I had returned, but not to stay. When I left the old house that day, I realized I wasn't carrying anything tangible with me. No photograph, No keepsake. The only thing I held was a sense of relief, as if I had finally placed a heavy stone exactly where it belonged in my mind. In the days that followed, I still went to the animal shelter every morning, still walked the dogs through the park. But there was a small difference. I could feel clearly. I wasn't walking just to fill the emptiness anymore. I walked because I wanted to savor each step, each cold gust of wind brushing my cheek. I began making plans for things that once felt too small to matter. Learning to cook a new dish, writing my story down, taking a short trip to a city I'd never been to. Each plan, no matter how simple, was a promise to myself. I will keep living, not just existing. Sometimes I still thought about the person who had left, but that memory no longer pulled me into the abyss. It was like a low note in a song, necessary to make the other melodies stand out. I knew I would face more loss in my life, but now I had the strength to stand. When it came, one weekend afternoon, I sat in a familiar cafe, watching the flow of people pass by. In that moment, I thought of the old photograph, the hollow face, the lifeless eyes, and I smiled. Not because I had found the old me again, but because I had become someone else. Imperfect, yet brave enough to keep going. You wouldn't believe this person used to be me, and neither would I. But I am grateful for every loss, because they are what led me here, to this place where I can lift my head, look life in the eye, and keep walking. I used to think loss was the period, the end of the sentence. But now I know it's only a comma, forcing us to pause, breathe deep, and keep writing our story. Life hasn't given back what I lost. Instead, it's given me new eyes to see, a new heart to feel, and new feet to walk with. I no longer try to become who I used to be. I choose to move forward, carrying both the pain and the joy, because they are all a part of me. If you're reading this, and you feel lost, please believe this. No one disappears completely. We're only standing still for a while, learning how to walk with different feet. And one day, you'll look in the mirror and smile. Not because every wound has healed, but because you've learned how to live with them, and still see life as something worth walking toward.